This is Realtor Dennis L. Hubbard with the March 2019 Market Report courtesy of Keeping Current Matters. Once a month I'll be posting a monthly report, and in between my channel will have short real estate related videos on a variety of topics. Check them out. Click the thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Today I'm going to talk about the news, but I don't want to talk about our news. I want to talk about other people's news because that's what this particular month is going to be about. There's so much negative news in the media right now. I have to be able to control the narrative. So many outlets are being so negative in what they're saying that it's hurting us. So I want to be able to control that narrative. And when I say control, I don't mean that we're going to spin something. I think the spin is being done by mass media. And what I want to do is I want to be able to make sure that my clients, my buyers and sellers, really understand what's truly taking place. I like what Sam Khater said. The chief economist at Freddie Mac, we're in a mental recession. It's a constant stream of negative headlines for a couple of months. It wears on you. And I think that's 100% true. So this month, what I want to do is take a look at some of those negative portrayals that are being put out there and just slaughter them. They're myths. They're not truths. And we have to be able to know that. First of all, for ourselves. And second of all, I have to simply and effectively communicate it to the people sitting in front of me at listing appointments. So I'll give you a couple of examples. This is from MarketWatch. The actual screen capture of their page. Cash out mortgage refinances are back. Will homes become ATMs again? So what are they doing with their headline? They're saying we're going back to 2008 when people were totally irrational and pulling money out of their house for all sorts of crazy things. Next one, consumer debt hits $4 trillion. And a subtitle, Americans are diving deeper and deeper into the red. Again, a title that catches attention, debt is up to $4 trillion, an all-time high. And Americans are going deeper and deeper into debt. Very negative spin on the report. I'll give you the real report in a second. Another one, this one from Bloomberg. Housing bear who called 2008 slowdown says worst is yet to come. Stack sees risk of worst year for housing since the last crash. These are the types of headlines that many of you are hearing and reading. And this one from USA Today. Will the U.S. fall into a recession by the end of 2020? Half of business economists think so. So again, there's all sorts of negative news out there, and the same thing was occurring to some degree back in 2008, all right? But realtors didn't adjust to it. We didn't try to affect the thinking on it. We just sat there. Well, let's make believe it's not happening. Let's just keep on going and hope everything works out for the best. We can't do that this time. I can't do that. This is what the real estate industry did the last time. And we have to make sure we don't do that this time. We can't bury our heads in the sand and hope the stuff will go away. I have to fight it right as it's being published, while it's being said, while it's being recorded. Because if I don't, ladies and gentlemen, it's going to cause uncertainty. And I think that's already happening in the marketplace right now. Uncertainty leads to confusion. Confusion leads to concern. Concern leads to fear. Fear turns to panic, and then panic causes paralysis. If we don't get over the uncertainty and the confusion right now, and it turns to fear, panic, and paralysis, then the market will be impacted by these news headlines, and we have to make sure that we turn that around. And when I'm talking about that, we can't do that from a local basis. I know how important real estate is from a local standpoint. The three most important words in real estate are local, local, local. I get that, all right? But I want you to understand that some of the influences on our Southeast Michigan market are national items. We have to know the macro market, the big umbrella type of things affecting real estate, not just our local market. I love the quote from Ivy Zelman. When she discusses this exact point, we would never suggest that a real estate company could be successful without fully understanding the local market trends. But ignoring macro trends or assuming that they do not carry the same weight would be an equally erroneous suggestion. In our experience, the most effective industry leaders appreciate the appropriate balance between the two ends of the spectrum. What are we saying again? We need to know our local data. We need to know what's happening in our market. But we also have to understand what's happening in the national market and how it's going to impact us locally. So let's go back over some of those headlines I just showed you. Cash out mortgage refinances are back. Will homes become ATMs again? Well, the challenge with many of these headlines is that the headlines are technically correct. Cash out refinances as a percentage of all mortgages have definitely gone up. There's no question about that. They're now 81%. These are the last numbers of the third quarter of 2008. The fourth quarter numbers haven't been released, but we're looking at 81%. At the worst, in 2006, it was 89%. So people, saying that cash out refinances are going back to the numbers from a decade ago, you're not wrong, but they're not giving you the whole picture. If you go further into the report from Freddie Mac, what you'll see is the amount of equity cashed out is nowhere near where it was in 2006. Through 3 quarters, it's $38 billion. And that sounds like a lot of money. There's no question about that. We'll probably end 2018 at somewhere around 50 to 52 billion of equity cashed out. But when we take a look at 2006, when 321 billion was cashed out, we're talking about 1/6 of what it was then. And the amount that was cashed out now outside of the housing crash years, where there's no equity to pull out. We're lower than we were in 2001, 2, 3, 4. So what winds up taking place is, though the percentage is up, people are now taking money out of their house. They're not wasting it on depreciating assets. They're not, buying jet skis or a new car or going out on lavish vacations. Now they're spending their money more correctly. They're pulling money out of their house most often to maybe support their children with their college costs, pulling money out of their house to get the seed capital for a business they wanted to start. These are good reasons. Paying off debt, credit card debt. All right, that's what people are doing now. It's not the same as 2008, though the headline might make it seem that way. The next headline I talked about, consumer debt hits $4 trillion. And what aggravated me the most about this Yahoo Finance article was the first line. Americans are diving deeper and deeper into the red. Because although the title is correct, consumer debt did hit $4 trillion, that subtitle line is just an outright lie. If we look not at the total amount of debt, because of course that's going to go up, they don't adjust it for inflation. But as the population gets bigger, more people take on debt. As the economy gets better, more people buy a new car, move up to a bigger house. So of course debt is going to go up. But what we need to do, that same report that showed the $4 trillion lets us know that the household debt service ratio for mortgages as a percentage of disposable personal income, how much is the debt compared to how much money you make? That's the really important thing. Not the total amount, but what each family is paying in regards to how much money they're making. So although $4 trillion is at an all-time high, the 4.24% of their disposable income is at a 40-year low. It's lower today than it was in 1980 and every year since. And I'm talking about at least a 40-year low. Prior to 1980, they didn't even record those numbers. So at $4 trillion, the headline is like, oh my goodness, we're in a mess. If you go through the report, you'll find out we're at the lowest ratio per disposable personal income. We're in phenomenal shape right now. Not bad shape, phenomenal. It's the best it's been in 40 years. Housing Bear, who called 2008 slowdown, Stack sees risk of worst year for housing since the last crash. I don't even know where he gets his information from. I like what Logan Mohtashami, and I apologize if I butchered that last name, from the Financial Truth said, I don't expect big declines in demand or massive monthly supply spikes like we saw in 2006 and 2008 to create any meaningful price declines in any markets. We have to be mindful that the housing cycle never had a boom in total home sales. The epic sales decline that some housing bears are praying for will not happen in 2019. So when outlets like Bloomberg are looking at that, when someone says it's going to be a horrible year, they're talking about the number of transactions, and they're talking about prices. And what the Financial Truth is saying is, well, neither one of those two things look like they're going to happen. And they're not the only ones saying that, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take a look at transactions. And I get this updated every single month by the folks at Keeping Current Matters. The Mortgage Bankers Association and Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, how many transactions do they think they're going to have this year versus last year? That housing bear said we're going to have the worst year since 2008. Well, Fannie Mae says we're going to do a little bit better than break even. Freddie Mac says no, we're going to do better than break even. We're going to do real well, and the Mortgage Bankers Association projections are that we're going to do phenomenally well. And if you're asking for my personal projection, I kind of lean somewhere between the MBA and Freddie Mac. I think we're going to have a very good year. Now, the other question is, well, what about prices? And when people look at prices, they like to look at this graph going all the way back to 2000 through the end of last year. And when they look at this, they kind of see almost like a roller coaster. You know, it went up during the housing boom, it came crashing down, and it's going back up again. And you take a look at this and you say, all right, you know, based on this, if it is a roller coaster, then we're even higher than we were in 2006. So maybe that roller coaster is due to come sliding down again. I want to show you this graph in a different light. Let's assume we took the real price back in 2000 and we said that we just added to it the 3.6% of historic increase homes typically have. So every year since 2000, we add 3.6%. Forget about what actually happened. Let's just assume it took a normal appreciation. Well, if we follow that through, what we can see is that prices today are almost exactly where they should have been from the beginning. So from this point forward, do I think that there's a possibility that if prices kept on going up 6, 8, 10%, that we would be heading into a housing bubble? Yeah, but up until this point, we're just exactly where we should be. Going forward, we're going to have to see that, well, we can't continue the growth the way we have these last few years, and I think we all know that. Look at this quote from Zillow, just posted on February 26th. Overall, the housing market still favors sellers, but it's slowing, trending towards historic norms. So when it did hit that peak where we could get into trouble, what we're seeing in the housing market right now is just a softening of prices. Here are the year-over-year price changes for the last 10 months. If we take a look, we can see that compared to the same month of the previous year, prices are not crashing down. They're coming into a soft landing, more toward historical norms of about 3.6%. If we're going to use the analogy of a housing crash, this plane is coming in so softly, we're not even going to feel the wheels hit the ground. We'll have the softest landing we could imagine. So that's what's taking place right now, and it's projected to continue. The experts at the Home Price Expectation Survey, the 100 experts that they survey, said that it's going to drop from 4.2% by the end of the year to about 3.8%. Then we're actually going to, well, because the pendulum will swing back the other way, drop down a little bit below what the normal historic appreciation is. And we'll get back to that in a second, why that might happen. And then we're going to go back up again to about 3.3%. And I think you'll see after that a continuation of about 3.6 to 4%. So that projection that we're looking at, the worst year since the crash, I don't see that happening. And I'm not the only one. Ralph McLaughlin, CoreLogic's deputy chief economist, reported, if there are a lot of homes on the market and suddenly no one wants to buy them, you'll get into a downward spiral of price competition. Right now, however, we're in the opposite situation. There isn't an overabundance of homes on the market. Ladies and gentlemen, going into spring, inventory is increasing, and that's a good thing. We're reporting on the fact inventory is increasing, but we're still below 4 months of inventory, meaning we're still in that seller's market. Now, if the upper ends of our market, homes are $500,000 or more, the supply is well over 8 months. And that has to be adjusted as far as price is concerned. But for where the majority of the market demand is, the first-time home buyer market, the middle market, we don't have enough inventory, and there are plenty of buyers there. So we're not looking at pricing crash by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, Ivy Zelman said it this way. Our latest broker survey, stable mortgage rates, and expanding inventory give us confidence that the growth in the second half of 2019 will be materially enough to offset year-over-year declines that are likely to persist into the second quarter of this year. What is she saying? The first couple of months, we still might get some housing reports that are a little bit slow because of the slowdown that occurred last fall. So the numbers coming in based on the activity last fall might still show a little negative, but that the industry or the market is going to gain momentum going into that second quarter. and those numbers are going to be very strong towards the end of the year. And that's why Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the Mortgage Bankers Association say by year end, we're going to be just fine. As a matter of fact, earlier this month, Chief Economist Dr. Frank Nothaft for CoreLogic said, fixed rate mortgage rates have dropped 0.6 percentage points since November 2018, and today are lower than they were a year ago. With interest rates at this level, we expect a solid home buying season this spring. CoreLogic's March report even hinted at the possibility that prices might start to drift up a little bit, not continue to slide down. So I, as a realtor, have to be able to talk to my clients correctly about what's really taking place in the market and not depend, again, not depend on people who don't understand our industry. The single most important thing I want you to get out of this month's report is why I, as a realtor, need to control the narrative and not say stupid stuff when clients see negative headlines. Not say things like, oh, don't worry about it, everything is fine. But let you know what's truly happening, because the negative headlines that are out there don't have any basis. The vast majority have no basis at all. Now let's talk about the one that does have a basis and what it means. Will the U.S. fall into a recession by the end of 2020? Half of business economists think so. Now, if you're a follower of my blog, you know that people are calling for a recession within the next 18 to 20 months. This is not news to anyone on my monthly email list. As a matter of fact, I recently posted an article on my blog on why the housing market will survive the next economic slowdown. You can go to the URL right down at the bottom there, and I've also put that link in my description below this video. Now, we're talking about 4 different surveys: the Wall Street Journal Survey of Economists, the Pulsenomics Survey of Analysts, the Duke University Survey of CFOs, and the National Association of Business Economist members. And what they each did is say, when do you think a recession is about to begin? And they give their guesses. So each one of those 4 separate surveys we charted here for you, so you had the exact information coming out of those reports. Then what we did is we averaged each year. We took all those percentages and averaged it out and made a much simpler graph to look at. So we can see that 22% of the respondents from all 4 surveys think that by the end of this year, we're going to begin a recession. 46% think it's going to happen before the end of 2020. So now that we're looking at 68%, more than 2 out of 3 believe that a recession is going to take place by the end of next year. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't believe in good news or bad news. I just believe in the news. So let's say exactly what is happening. We have 4 very prominent reports that surveyed very prominent segments of the people who are supposed to know what's taking place in the economy. And 2 out of 3 of them, more than 2 out of 3 of them, are saying, yeah, there's a recession coming. But what I want everyone watching this to understand is recession does not equal housing crisis. It doesn't mean that. As a matter of fact, I don't even think we should use the word recession. I think if we use the definition of the word recession, we'll be in better shape. If you go to the dictionary, the definition of the word recession is 2 consecutive quarters where the GDP is down, had slowed. That's not a housing crisis. That means the economy slows down for 2 consecutive quarters. I'm not trying to spin words. That just means that there's going to be 2 quarters that the economy is going to slow down. Some people are going to hear the word recession and think housing crisis because that's what happened the last recession. So I think that we should change our wording. Anytime someone uses the word recession, we have to change it to economic slowdown. And if we take a look at that, here are the last 5 recessions and what happened to home prices during them. Obviously, the last recession, home prices dropped dramatically. The reason was our last recession was caused by the housing industry in conjunction with the banking industry. But if we look at the 4 recessions prior to that, there was only one time home prices fell, and it was less than 1%. The other 3 times, prices increased during the recession. In fact, 2 of those 3 times they increased a greater rate than the normal historical appreciation of 3.6%. So, recessions don't mean house prices are going to fall. And the most interesting thing in one of those surveys, the Pulsenomics survey, they actually didn't just ask the question, when do you think a recession is going to occur? Those surveys we were just talking about, they went on to say, what do you think is going to happen to home prices? That same group of over 100 economists, market analysts, and real estate experts who they surveyed are saying this is what's going to happen to home prices over the next couple of years. You'll probably remember this graph because we just showed it a few minutes ago. But they're not projecting red. They're not projecting a depreciation. They're not projecting that home prices are going to fall. What they're projecting is during the recession, the level of appreciation is going to soften. Houses are not going to go up by 6, 7, 8% or more like they have over the last couple of years. They're going to soften to something more natural. Again, the pendulum is going to swing a little bit, and they're going to soften to more natural, more normal appreciation levels. So there's no panic here, and I'm not the only one saying that. Again, let's go to Ralph McLaughlin, CoreLogic's deputy chief economist. There's no reason to panic right now, even if we may be headed for a recession. We're seeing a cooling of the housing market, but nothing that indicates a crash. Again, this plane is coming in for one of the softest landings in housing history. And Morgan Housel, a well-renowned financial analyst, I love what he just tweeted out a few weeks ago. An interesting thing is that the widespread assumption that the next recession will be as bad as 2008, natural to think that way, but statistically highly unlikely, could be over before you realized it began. Could be over before you realized it began. So here's one of the most well-renowned, most sought-after speakers in the financial sector saying this. This landing is going to be so soft, you're not going to realize you're on the ground. That's important. Understanding that and having that in your mindset is crucially important. But even more important is getting that word out to everyone you talk to. Not just my clients, not just buyers and sellers. I want you to tell everyone that's around you. You have to get that word out because the negative news is making people drift one way. And if a recession is going to happen before the end of next year, well, we have an interesting event in the middle of all that. Probably the most highly contested American presidential election in our nation's history. Forget about what side you're on. The vitriol that's going to come out of that election, especially if there's a recession in the wind, the negative headlines are going to be so crazy that if we don't battle it now, if we don't understand what it really means, it can lead to fear and panic, and that could lead to paralysis, a self-fulfilling prophecy. My partners at Keeping Current Matters go through everything I need for this report. We're in a market where I'm saying something different than what many headlines are saying. Some people might question me on it, so I want to show you where the sources of where the information came from, the link to the report, the study, the survey, the white paper. Wherever we got that information, you have all that information right in front of you. We are likely headed to a recession. We are definitely headed for negative headlines, but we are not headed for a housing crash. I'd like to take a minute to offer these two resources for free. What I try to do every quarter, and the new buyer and seller guides are available right now, is give you a beautiful 20-page book, beautifully laid out, beautifully written. It's set up gorgeously. These are the fabulous books, e-guides, mini magazines that I'll be giving to my buyers and sellers that will help them understand what's truly happening in the market. To get your free copy, just go to www.dennislhubbard.com and choose either the seller or buyer tab for your free guide. That concludes the March 2019 monthly market report, made possible by Keeping Current Matters, an invaluable resource every realtor should gladly pay for. Until next month, I'm Dennis L. Hubbard. Oh, and by the way, I wouldn't be a proper YouTuber if I didn't say, click that thumbs up and hit that subscribe button.